Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com, and we are coming to you again at 2 o'clock. And we are here every Monday from 2 o'clock to 3, and always glad to have you with us. You can pick us up, of course, at your leisure, and tune us in at allpointstv.com on YouTube, and we're going to be all over the place before it's over. we haven't grown to our major proportions yet, but we're getting there and working on it every day, and eventually we hope to arrive at that destination. Came to the studio to do a couple of things today, and I'm just full of energy today because I haven't been with you for the last 7 days. When I get here, I'm so excited I can hardly contain myself, knowing that you're out there and waiting for us to come on, and we are like a family. Well, you know that song by Sister Sledge, "We Are Family"? I think they should have had their song as that. We should have. We should change our theme song, John. That we are family. And today we got another treat coming to you after this show is over, and that is the two Catherines coming in at 3:30. And they're doing their program as they always do on the second and fourth Mondays, and they'll be here from 3:30 to 4. I'm looking forward to that, and I'll hang around in the studio after this program is over just to watch what they do, because I always enjoy their program. I wish they did it every Monday, but we're here every Monday, and we're glad to have you with us. I'm going to be talking about a couple of my favorite topics today. One of them, of course, is John and I don't always see eye to eye on this one, but one of my favorite topics is the Donald Trump administration. And I do think that Donald Trump is doing some things here that are quite outstanding. And I'm going to be talking about what he did over in Hamburg, Germany this past weekend. Went to Poland first, and used that as a pivotal point to launch into what was going to go on with the G20 Conference, the 12th of its kind. This was the 12th G20 summit. I think Obama attended. I think there were 5 of those during the 8 years of Obama's tenure. I tried to go back and look at it through history in terms of looking how many of those conferences were held during the last 8 years. And I think there were 5 of them, 5 of the 12 during Obama's administration. Now I could be wrong. I know it's at least 5, but the 12th G20 conference was held this past weekend in Hamburg, Germany, and I was waiting to see the fireworks. Everybody was predicting that they wanted to see what would happen when Putin and Donald Trump got together. The two alpha males got together and wanted to see what kind of combustion would take place. Some of them were hoping push them against each other, and it fizzled because Donald Trump. I'm always impressed with Donald Trump when it comes down to what the left is trying to get him to do and what Donald Trump ends up doing, because Donald Trump has made it a habit, quite frankly, of doing the exact opposite of what is expected of his administration by the left. And I can imagine how they must be really chomping at the bits after this conference was over, because Donald Trump refused to get sidetracked. I don't know if you saw that press conference over in Poland. Donald Trump went to Poland before he went to Hamburg, and he wanted to start off, I'm sure the intention was to start off in a place where there was friendly fire, gets enough unfriendly fire here in the United States. And of course they were expecting some more to go on over there at the G20, because Donald Trump is not looked at as being one of the boys in the old boys network. And so before he went to Hamburg, Germany, where the conference was being held, Donald Trump went to, of all places in Europe, went to Poland. And I think I don't have to think about it, it's by design, because when you understand how Poland differs from the rest of Western Europe, and I mean, when I say the rest of Western Europe, I mean all of it. Because in Western Europe, I don't know what these leaders are thinking about in the West. That includes Canada, and that includes the United States. I don't know what they're thinking about. They've opened their doors up to the jihadists, and they think they can vet these people because they've not bombed anybody yet. I mean, these people these political leaders in the West, these people are sick. These politicians are absolutely out of their minds. And unlike what they've done in places like France, you name these countries, Belgium, all of these countries, quite frankly, except Poland. And I was looking at a map the other day, and the map was color-coded, had these little red dots all over the map of Western Europe. And the dots were indicating where they had attacks by those who are the carriers of jihad. And they don't realize that there's not a Muslim in the Middle East that is not a carrier of jihad. He just has different expressions of it. And I suggest, if you don't understand the difference between jihad as it manifests itself in terms of flying planes in the buildings, which happened on 9/11, if you think that's the only expression of jihad, maybe you need to read the book by Spencer, Robert Spencer. The book called Stealth, Stealth, Stealth Jihad. And in that book, Robert Spencer is talking about jihad in a much more clandestine part of the jihadist movement in the country and the world, because jihad is not always about hijacking planes. In fact, they very seldom hijack planes. The reason why 9/11 happened was because it was unexpected, because jihad had not expressed itself in quite that dimension before. Now they got us going through going through all this radiation to get to the airplane. Got to hold your arm. I feel like I feel like I'm involved in somebody expecting me to do a bank house. Got a bank heist. You got to raise your arms in the air. You got to take your shoes off. You got to practically get undressed. Then you got to go through a scanning machine, and it's scanning your body. I don't know what they're looking at. It's like a unclothing that's taking place. And all these things going on because they have let their guard down, and they got the enemy, and that's what it is, quite frankly. They got a fifth column that they've invited into these Western countries. And in that color coding, what you saw in terms of putting dots all over the map of Western Europe, there was only one country that did not have a single red dot inside the landscape because they had not had one terrorist attack. Now, why was that? Because Poland has not allowed any immigration into its country. They refuse to take any of the quote-unquote refugees from Syria. And when they told, when the EU threatened sanctions on Poland for not taking any of these persons in, their response was sanctions would not be as bad as allowing the immigrants in. In other words, allowing the immigrants into Poland would be worse than sanctions. And so they refused to buckle. And the end result is that you look at that map and you see the end result in their case, taking all these persons in, is that they are now facing jihadist threats, and in Poland they're not facing that threat. They have not had one attack in Poland. And so Donald Trump goes over there because he knew he was going to face friendly, not friendly fire, but friendly reception, because Donald Trump has the same foreign policy as Poland has. It's just that they can carry their foreign policies out, where Donald Trump's got to fight to carry his out, yet the foreign policy he's carrying is in the best interest of the United States. So that tells me what then? That tells me that a lot of people in this country, including some of these federal judges, that don't have the best interests of this country at heart, because if they did, he would have to fight to get the foreign policy in place that would be in the best interest of this country. So there are a lot of people that are in high places that are pulling against this country, and you have to understand that. That's where the opposition is coming from the deep state, and they're not that deep you can't see them. You just watch what they do. Federal judges telling the president he cannot invoke certain restrictions on people coming into the country. You got judges applying the Constitution to people that don't even live in the country. You can't. You got to be kidding me. You can't have a religious test applied to people coming into the country because they say it violates the Constitution. And I want you to tell me, what rights do people over in Syria have under the Constitution of the United States? There's no protection of the people in Syria under the Constitution until they arrive here on these shores. As long as they're outside, it doesn't apply. And they're applying it anyway. Why? Because you got a fifth column in this country, and some of them are indigenous to the country. They're not all being imported from outside. Some of them are being inside, and they're the ones importing them into the country. And they're doing the same thing in Western Europe. Poland is not making that mistake. Poland, the politicians in Poland intend, dedicated to, and in fact will keep Poland Polish and make no apology about it. But you think France is still France? Go there and see what France is now. Paris is not Paris anymore. Paris used to be one of the cultural capitals of the world. It's not that anymore. And London's not London anymore. Over there with a jihadist mayor. And you think you're going to solve the problem by putting the jihadists in power, and therefore you are frustrated. They're still bombing in London, England. And nobody can figure this stuff out. But Poland has figured it out. And so Donald Trump went there. He went there for getting a great reception before going into the hornet's nest. And he handled himself magnificently in Hamburg, Germany. Nobody wants to give him credit for it. But they should have taken a page out of what happened when he was in Poland, because one of the anti-American, and of course by being anti-American, he's certainly going to be anti-Trump, because Trump is, whatever Trump's faults are, Trump is pro-American, and there's nobody can say other than that. This man is a pro-American president. Unlike the president we had for 8 years, Obama was against this country. And there's no sense of lying about it. This man was trying to bring this country down, and even though he's not president anymore, he's still trying to do that. That's why everywhere you see Donald Trump show up, Obama shows up. South Korea, Hamburg, Germany. This man is actually shadowing Donald Trump, because Obama no longer representing, and never did represent the country, quite frankly, but he was president of the country. And he's now representing what he represented when he was president, representing the deep state, those that are against this country. And he's going around right now telling people that they should not follow what Donald Trump is doing, because Donald Trump's tenure is only temporary. And somebody needs to investigate that and find out what that means. What does that mean for this president to go around telling people his tenure, that Donald Trump's tenure is temporary? I mean, that's very problematical. And what does he mean by that? And I do have some ideas on it. Let's see how it plays out. But we need to be on guard here, because that's very, 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 I don't want to say dangerous, but it's certainly very threatening for a former president to be saying that. And the question is, what does this man know, and how does he know it? He's speaking with a lot of authority here. His tenure will be short-lived. Short-lived through what things? What is Obama talking about? We need to have an answer to that question, because he's saying that on some authority, and he's not in power. So on what authority is he saying that? On the authority vested in him, what, through the deep state? Because that's whose name in which he's speaking. You're not speaking in the name of the United States anymore, because he mercifully left office on the 20th of January of 2017, and he's no longer in that office. And thank God for that miracle, because this man was one of the most dangerous men that we've had in the Oval Office. And the real threat that they posed, they thought it was going to be carried out through he was a forerunner for what was supposed to happen in the next administration under Hillary Clinton. And they thought they had this thing wrapped up. 8 years of Obama, 4 more years under Obama, with Obama's program, which is really not his program, but the same program that Hillary Clinton would have been running, which is really Saul Alinsky. And I wrote about this today in my post, and I said this in my post, that when Donald Trump was saying that he wanted to, not Donald Trump, when Barack Obama said he wanted to fundamentally transform this country, fundamentally transform the country, what was he talking about? Because the fundamental change in the country is what we had on the 17th of September of 1787 in Philadelphia. That was a fundamental transformation of the country. And so since Obama was saying that in 2009, and we had a fundamental transformation in 1787, because he's talking about a transformational change in the time he took over the Oval Office, he couldn't have been talking about that, because that fundamental change had already occurred. So what was Obama talking about? He's talking about the fundamental change in another founding father, one that was not the one we had in the past, or one to be. And who was that founding father? It was Saul Alinsky. And that's what they were running, and they're running it now. And Donald Trump put a pause on it. It's only a pause because no president can be president in perpetuity anymore, because it's restricted by the 22nd Amendment that was passed in the aftermath of the dictatorship of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that's what that was, a dictatorship. The second dictatorship we've had in the United States. The first one was the dictatorship of Abraham Lincoln. I got to rewrite history. This was a dictatorship we had under Roosevelt. A man that would not bend his will to the will of the founders. And the founders had, through a 2-term precedent set by George Washington, had that precedent set in place until 1940. And Roosevelt refused to follow it. And what he set up in his place, whether you want to admit it or not, is he set up a dictatorship in his place. You had a dictatorship between 1933 and 1945. Roosevelt died in office, quite frankly, during his 4th term. But that man was in office for 3 full terms, and he died during his 4th term. And what does that mean? What does it mean when a person does not leave office? It means a person is a dictator. the president was to leave office after 2 terms, and everyone had done that. No one even attempted to run for a 3rd term until his 5th cousin did it, tried it. He wasn't successful at it, but Theodore Roosevelt tried to do what had not been done before, and that was to come back after stepping down for 4 years, and Taft was president, and came back and challenged Taft in 1912, and he tried to, in fact, be a 3-term president. But because the party was split, Wilson became president in 1912. But the attempt, the shaking of that foundation, you don't shatter it all at one time. You shake it first, and the shaking of that foundation would have occurred under Theodore Roosevelt. And Theodore Roosevelt's 5th cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, not only shook it, he shattered it. Through which you had to rush in then, in the aftermath of Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you rushed in to apply the 22nd Amendment to restrict the president to 2 terms, which going back and institutionalizing, which is what it amounted to, institutionalizing and putting into law and put into the Constitution that which didn't need a mandate in the Constitution, didn't need a law to be passed, because of the respect that every office holder up until the Roosevelts respected the framers enough that no law was in fact required. So we have Donald Trump now that put a monkey wrench, because these people are statists, and they do not intend to follow the letter of the law or to follow the Constitution. They don't intend to do that. They intend to outlaw it. The law in this country has been outlawed by these politicians, or to put it more succinctly, these organized gangsters. That's why I keep bringing to the studio, by the way, this book by Thomas De Lorenzo called Organized Crime, the unvarnished truth about government, because we have our organized gangsters running this country. And I'm not saying anything about how perfect Donald Trump is. I do not make the case that we have, we've arrived in nirvana. This is it. We've arrived at some, destination where we don't have to worry about anything anymore, because Donald Trump is now president. I'm not making that claim. I'm saying that there were some things that were intended based on the 8 years of Obama, and they intended another 4 years under another Alinskyite, which is what Hillary Clinton represented. Both of them are Alinskyites. The one, Saul Alinsky, the one who wrote the book in 1971, where the book Rules for Radicals was written. And they were all drinking from that same well, only that Alinsky's idea was to stay outside of the network of power and fight it from the outside and, sabotage it. But the idea that Hillary Clinton had and Obama had obviously was not to stay on the outside, but come inside and do the undermining from within. And that's what we saw Obama doing. And he did it for 8 years. And now that he's not in power, and they see that what he was doing is being transformed in a different way, more in line with the ideas of the framers, they're now coming out to oppose that, because they understand that at least during these 4 years, this is now put on pause, and that is to the benefit of this country. And what we ought to be doing right now, quite frankly, is thinking about how we're going to, in fact, maintain this new thrust that we have in place right now, so that we have someone that will be in place to run as an outsider after this administration is over. We can't go back to what we were doing. We can't go back to these inside politicians, because that's a death knell for this country. We need outsiders now. See, the insiders have done what they've already shown what they intend to do, and the insiders are not going to get this job done. In fact, the insiders are part of the problem, a big part of the problem.
We're not even talking, though, the ones that are elected, though. I mean, I keep on telling people this. It's like the people in the offices in D.C., the ones that you would, maybe in the catering service, for example, it's tied to getting catering.
Turn your mic up something, John.
Okay, the people who, like, so provide the catering support or whatever, those contracts are already made. Those are the ones, people laugh at that, but that's where the power is at.
They laugh at it?
They think they roll their eyes when you bring that kind of stuff up, but it's so diseased from the... It's not maybe disease. They pay taxes maybe and they're law abiding, but the pricing and stuff is like worked out between the old boys network, and let's face it, you can't challenge it because they got contractual obligations, and then that'd be a lot of lawsuits so a lot of that stuff is tied to that. It's tied to these the offices in the Congress itself. The support staff. Some of those have been there. They changed hands so many times with elected officials, but those people behind have been there in power for 20 years.
Yeah, John, it's not a laughing matter. I know people are, I saw a post before I came to the studio, and there was a tape made by a person over in England talking about how bad the conditions are over there, and this one person responded to it and was trying to take down these points this person was making, and was laughing at what he thought was these extreme comments being made. Right now, the truth is extreme. Tell the truth right now in the world, in this country, in the world, is looked at as being extreme. This is no laughing matter. This is very serious what is going on, and the deep state that John was talking about is as serious as cancer. In fact, it's a cancer upon the body politic, because the American people only have so much say-so on what goes on inside of the country that we the people are supposed to be in control of, but the people don't have control.
Locally,
the deep state has control.
Well, locally, I met people, and I mock these people, and I forget, if you guys are listening, when I was younger, I used to roll my eyes because when somebody was like always attending the Flint City Council meetings, for example, and they were going over the minutia. Well, so and so, this councilman, he or person now, they wanted this for their streets, and they would break it down. They have all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, just get a life. You know what? Those people, some of them are dead, some are still around, but they moved on to other places. If you are hearing this, my apologies to you. We needed more people like you. You're the ones you could have ferreted out stuff if we had listened to you and heeded your warnings. We could avoid a lot of this crap that Flint was taking. And on a larger scale, we do trust politicians far too much.
Oh, too much,
because all they do is they make your appearance every time the election cycle is about to run out and they have to go get reelected. They come out there, shake your hand outside your factory, or maybe meet with your Rotary Club or your Lions Club or your church group, and they talk to you, and then the next day you're seeing down the road they're talking to another organization with total contrary ideas, and they're promising them about the same amount of stuff they had promised yours. So and yet we have to let this happen. And they'll vote for either one of these. And
it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing that there's a trust of politicians, and what is it based on? Let me read something about. Let me pause for a minute. I want to read something that's in the Constitution. I want to give you some idea what the framers thought about politicians. John, let me read Article 2, Section. Don't tell me. Article 1, Section 4, Clause 2.
You can actually read it, because you usually can cite it from memory. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna. It's gonna be there where I say it is. I'm not gonna be misquoting the Constitution. Yeah, let me read Article 1, Section 4, Clause 2. I want to tell you. I want to show you what the framers thought of politicians. Let me read this to you. Now, this is about the Congress, right? The Congress shall assemble. Have you read this right here? The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year. In other words, the framers did not want these jokers sitting up there like they're doing right now. They were saying, look, in other words, they were looked at as being so irrelevant, John. The framers said in the Constitution that they should meet at least once a year. And that's make sure you at least meet once. In other words, they did not intend for these guys to get up there and find as if they're necessary, and just sit up there over the country and finding something to do. And I'll tell you something. If these guys we should celebrate when these guys go on vacation. Every time they leave Washington, we should applaud. It's when they come back to Washington we should be mourning, because when they get back there, you can believe this, there's injury done to the country. It's amazing.
But Adam Smith warned about, there's not going to be a meeting of, what we call, people in the market, the capitalists we call now. We call them capitalists. He didn't call them back then, but he said there's not going to be a meeting where these people are not going to conspire against the general public's, best concerns or wishes or whatever, or best interest. Well, if you look at this, at least the entrepreneur, the capitalist, whatever, has got skin in the game. These politicians have their suit and their glib, articulate things and their teleprompter at stake. That's about all they have.
Yeah.
Let's face it, when they walk out of office,
you're very right.
Millions of dollars. How do they do that with $174,000 or $200,000? I think a senator gets. How do they walk away after just even one term, multi-millions in their bank accounts? How do they do that?
Let me quote their salary, and how many of you could do this? Their salary, they say, well, we pay them for, what they pay themselves for representation is $174,000 a year, plus office expenses. Of course, they go in there and reach in there and put that in their pocket. And how is it then, with $174,000 a year, that we have half of the members of Congress that become not only millionaires but multimillionaires? I mean, what product did Nancy Pelosi create, and then what production she involved in that she's now worth about $35 million? How does that happen? And does anybody believe that the members of Congress are 50 times smarter than the people here in the general public? For example, by income, 1% of the American people in the general population are millionaires. In Congress, 50 times the percentage is millionaires in Congress. In other words, half the people in Congress are millionaires. How does that happen, you think?
Look at Maxine Waters. What is she before she became a politician?
Probably the same thing she is right now, an airhead.
Yeah, but no, she lives in a $4.4 million mansion, I read.
Yeah, and does not live in her district, by the way, and they keep on electing her.
I'm amazed. I mean, and that,
it is amazing.
And she's supposed to represent, Pelosi and she are both supposed to be members of the party that represents the working class. These people would actually be repulsed by somebody who worked in a factory and actually didn't have country clubs membership. And these people are the walking hypocrites.
Disdainful of them. The politicians have a great propaganda machine. That is the only way you can explain how they're able to be looked at as having some credibility in power. I keep coming back to this point about Lord Acton. I think the problem that Lord Acton had is that he did not understand the kind of people that pursue political power. I mean, people like Maxine Waters, Dianne Feinstein. Really, it's a whole litany of people. I mean, it's like a laundry list. 535 members of Congress, probably all of them are this way. Some less so than others. We have to say that and be honest about that. But most of these persons are power crazed. That's why they will not term limit themselves. George Washington, by the way, term limited himself. He didn't have to do that. They're ready to make him king. And the world was stunned twice by George Washington. And they didn't know what they were looking at. They didn't know what they were looking with the framers, but they didn't know what they were looking with George Washington. They were surprised that man rode into power after the revolution and then rode out without taking over power. This man rode in 1783 when the war was over and went home. The world was stunned. They didn't know what is that about. They had never seen that before. And he did that. And we have these politicians right now. They got all these people believing in them, and none of it is deserved, none of it is earned, none of it is based on merit. And how they do it? They do it through the continuation of a propaganda machine they have in place here. They do it by appropriating other people's wealth and handing it out in their name. And I have to tell you something here. This is a little secret here, that much of the brokenness in society right now is caused by these politicians. Because you know where the benevolence was before it was appropriated by the politicians? It was your next door neighbor. You needed something, the persons around you were the ones that gave it to you. And the politicians expropriated that charity, put it in their own hands, and now they distribute it out in their name by force. I mean, the idea of politicians are the ones that are benevolent is really amazing. It really is amazing that people think that politicians are benevolent after taking wealth by force. These people are tiller, taking money from people by force, and then have the nerve to appear to be benevolent by talking about they're going to give you a tax break. They want to give you a tax break on money that they should not have had taken from you in the first place, and they're going to be benevolent enough to give you back to the money they stole. Because taxation is theft. It was theft yesterday, and it's theft today, and it'll be theft tomorrow. In fact, that's really what the framers were standing up against. They ran from Britain over here to avoid this theft, and George III followed them over here. Just like they followed Obama, the media followed Obama over to Poland. And that's not going to change. You can forget that. Government is out of control now. And we need, in order to rein them in, another constitutional convention. I know people are saying, well, the danger of that is that if you do that, that it may run out of control. There are more checks and balances that won't happen than the checks and balances right now in place, because they've overthrown the Constitution in this country. And that's what this book is talking about in terms of this book called, a couple of books. One is Who Overthrew the Constitution, and the brilliant book by Judge Napolitano called The Constitution in Exile. And it is in exile. The Constitution in this country does not apply anymore. Mark Levine makes this point. He's making a brilliant point. And that is, we are in a post-Constitution America right now. The Constitution in this country does not apply anymore. There's nothing that restrains these politicians except that they cannot go too much out of control. They're enough out of control as it is, but they can't go too far, because then even the ones that's politically asleep will wake up. So they have to be somewhat careful that they don't expose themselves to those. I mean, it's just the ones that really that understand what is going on. We are there. That's a minority group. As long as they can keep it underneath that, then they can maintain this facade that these people have any integrity. They don't have any integrity. Every last one of the ones in Congress right now. In fact, I was raising a question on my Facebook post. One of my best posts, I think, today, before I came to the studio. Because I was talking about Donald Trump over in Europe. And I think Donald Trump was absolutely brilliant. Nobody's recognized that this man went over there and did some brilliant things. It went over a lot of people's heads. But you can believe this, the elite was paying attention to it, because they thought this man was going to they thought that if they continued to put that narrative out there, the hacking of the election, they would make Donald Trump have to distance himself from Putin. And I don't know if you noticed it, and if this went over your head, but what Donald Trump did to show that he was feathered by what they were doing, trying to get him to come out and to prove he was not a puppet of Putin, which they don't believe that. That's what they're pushing in front of the American people, because they think the American people can't figure this stuff out, and to a large extent, a lot of them can't figure it out, probably half the country. The left can't figure this stuff out, nor and to a large extent do they want to figure it out. But Donald Trump was right in their face, and that was why he met with Putin, not for 30 minutes. That's the time that the meeting was supposed to have been held. That meeting lasted 2 hours and 35 minutes. Because Donald Trump was not going to go in there and let anyone tell him what he could and what he could not talk about, and who he could talk to about it. He talked to Putin for 2.5 hours, and you can see the comfort zone the two men had. A lot of chemistry. One of the persons that saw this was Stephen Cohen, who is a Russian expert, a professor emeritus at NYU, New York City University, and Princeton University. This man's an expert on Russia, and I saw him on Tucker Carlson's show, and I took his topic as my last 3 Facebook posts, because he said that if he were to classify the Donald Trump in Europe, he would have classified it this way. I wrote this down. He said that he would have classified Donald Trump's meeting over in Europe, he would have classified it as potentially historic new detente anti-Cold War partnership begun by Trump and Putin, but meanwhile attempts to sabotage escalate. Potentially historic new detente anti-Cold War partnership begun by Trump and Putin, but meanwhile attempts to sabotage escalate. And that's what you're looking at. I thought that was brilliant on the part of Stephen Cohen. And so that's why I'm using the last 3 posts that I've done, part 1, part 2. I thought I was only going to do 2 parts. I did have to do a 3rd part today. And what Cohen suggested was that the two men, so first of all, he said that Donald Trump was politically courageous. What the two men could do is form an anti-terrorist alliance. Donald Trump could do that with Putin. Putin could do that with Donald Trump. And the two men could form an anti-terrorist alliance, and that would be really something that was be fearsome to those on the left, because they want to use this imported. That's why they're importing these terrorists. Talking about they can vet people that have an ideology that is antagonistic to the Western ideals of things. You can vet them, and they'll come in here and fall in line between an idea that's foreign to them from the Middle East. That's not going to happen. The persons are coming here with the idea of setting up Sharia law, and there's not one Muslim in the Middle East. I don't care how friendly they are and how nice they are inside this American context. They do not accept the Constitution over Sharia law. And I have a Muslim doctor, and just as nice, and you'd be surprised of how nice these persons are. It does not blind me to the fact that they are jihadists, and that they desire Sharia law, and they are in the jihadist movement to bring about the caliphate. It's not all about flying planes into buildings. That's not the only way to do it. You also get more and more and more of the real estate. One of the things they're doing in this state, as a matter of fact, is they're getting ready to run a person for the governorship. We're going to see how that plays out. Because what you're seeing here is a creeping form of the Islamization of America. And it's a generational thing. You'll grow up with it. And before you know it, it has already occurred. Just like you grew up with this disenchantment with the Constitution. And all of a sudden, its dismissal is accepted in the political landscape.
But that's been great. I'm not disagreeing with what you just said about the creeping stuff, going on. But this disregard for the Constitution, we've allowed so many organizations to be created from the government that simply wasn't spelled out in the Constitution. And then when you try to bring that up, people say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that's horse and buggy thinking." But if they had addressed that and stayed true to more to the Constitution, this divisiveness wouldn't have been allowed to reduce, because somebody wasn't able to get a system going where now so many people are dependent on it. And that's where I just shake my head, because people are so willing to go along to get along. They didn't call people. There are some people out there that are considered wags. They're always considered troublemakers. Like the guy I was referring to. The people are always bringing up what's going on with the city council. And when somebody did bring that kind of stuff, I remember on my hearing that when I was a kid, and everybody, "Oh, come on, man, you can't go back to that." And then they would mock this person for thinking.
Yes.
And it's like, no, this person's the reason why those things were in place is to prevent something, and we just totally disregard it, and we're motivated and radically is because we're more out of compassion.
John, it's amazing that people do not see it, because it's so clear. It's up in our faces. It's right in front of our eyes. We don't. There's not a lot of this is being hidden. You said something about the things government's involved in. I think it was Walter Williams. I don't know what Walter Williams is writing anymore. I haven't seen him on the. I think he's given up writing his weekly column. Walter Williams from George Mason University was saying that 3/4, I think he said 2/3, but I think it's 3/4. 2/3 is 6%. I think it's now 3/4. It's gone up quite a bit since he made the statement about the fact the federal government is doing about, in his estimation, 2/3 of things they're doing are unconstitutional. It's about 75% of the things the federal government is doing unconstitutional. And you have to keep in mind that there was an enumeration of powers in the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8. And the framers were trying to enumerate, these are the things you can do. That which is not in fact enumerated, mean delegated to the federal government, those things therefore are left up to the states. In other words, the states are saying, here's what we have conceded to the federal government. Out of our eminent and prescient power, we have delegated from ourselves. This is what they're actually saying. Because you say that there's a delegation of powers in Article 1, Section 8. What you're really saying is that there's got to be a delegator. Has anybody ever asked the question, well, who's doing the delegation? They should. The delegation of power has to come from somebody. It's not coming from the federal government, because the federal government is delegating its own power. It delegates to itself all the power. Why would it give any of it away? Power is being delegated to the federal government. Who are the delegators? The delegators are the states. And they're saying in your creation, the states speaking to the federal government, its daughter, that which we will delegate to you, because it is our interest to do so, because we only delegated so much authority to you in the past under the articles, and that didn't work because we found out that the Shays Rebellion exposed the danger to the states. Therefore, we are now going to have to concede more power to the federal government. And here's the powers that we are delegating to the federal government. And it's listed here in Article 1, Section 8, as they itemize it. Article 1, Section 8 has 18 clauses in it. And in those clauses, they delegate all the things that they were in fact allowing to be placed away from the power of themselves as states, and they were giving this much of the power to the federal government, only because in doing so, it maintained a protection umbrella over the states, this much and no more. And then to make it even more clear, this much and no more, it said in the 10th Amendment, that which is not delegated to the federal government and not prohibited by the Constitution to the states remains with the states and to the people therein. Well, that was so much words on paper. None of it applies right now because they've taken on to themselves even more authority, and they made the states over the long haul provinces of the federal government. And that happened, by the way, in 1913. I contend this also. This is another contention that I make. I don't know if I can get anybody to buy into it, because a lot of these things people laugh at because they really don't know what's going on. Quite frankly, there's like a veil across people's faces. This takes a lot of study. And sometimes you have to do this stuff. You have to study this stuff all day instead of half the night. It's like a veil. But I now contend something else that nobody else is contending. I contend that the visible slaves were freed in 1865. In terms of the visibility of the enslavement, which would have been the 13th Amendment, where it was outlawed in the country by a constitutional amendment. Listen very carefully. If it says slavery is prohibited in the country through the 13th Amendment that was ratified in December of 1865, okay, we all can go and read that. But just because other language does not have the word slavery in it does not mean that there was not slavery then that was put in its place. I contend that slavery, the whole country was enslaved. And the enslavement of the entire country took place in 1913. Three things happened in that year. The Federal Reserve System was set up. The 16th Amendment was placed in the Constitution. And the 17th Amendment, through which you had the election of the senators by the states, that was changed in the 17th Amendment. All three of those things were bad. All three of those things collectively have enslaved this nation. And so although the slaves, as it was constituted in the Constitution prior to 1865, changed in that year, and then a new form of slavery without the word slavery was being in it was put in its place in 1913, and the entire country was enslaved and is enslaved right now. And if anybody doubt it's been enslaved, that the country has been enslaved, all you have to do is look at the money, because that's part of it also. There is no money in the system. It may surprise you, but they went before the Congress, and when I say they, I meant people like Janet Yellen, who is over the Federal Reserve right now, called the Federal Reserve Bank, but she's over the Federal Reserve. You got a Federal Reserve Bank. And they asked, one of the senators asked her predecessor, Bernanke, they asked him about the goal. And he said there is no goal. And you could see the senators on that committee almost jump, because they were surprised that he would say that, and that would be true. There's nothing backing up this currency. This currency is nothing but debt. There is no money in the system. Only paper. And some chump change. The coins. That's chump change. You can write anything you want to on the paper. You can write this amount on the money. Yeah, you used to be able to exchange the currency for gold. They would say, this is a gold note, $20 gold note. You used to be able to go in there and change the $20 for 20 its equivalency in gold. You now can change $20. I went and changed before I came to the studio. I changed the $20 bill. I got 4 5s for it. You can get 21. In other words, you can change paper for paper. That's enslavement. And when we get a chance, we'll go into that as well. Okay, I got to get out of here. I want you to always follow your dream. Because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.